This is how you get to that high level, how you upgrade your Korean expressions. 왜냐면 한국인들도 헷갈리는 표현을 우리 알려드릴 거예요. So you guys will be learning all the things that even the Koreans can get mixed up in. And the reason we're doing it here is because I've got Daniel, Professor Daniel Svobada in the house with me. He is the professor of interpretation and translation at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. So this week, what are we looking at?
Well, if you have some good pickup lines, and I really love those, what do you need at the end of all that? A way to say goodbye sometimes, right? So
A way to get out of the conversation.
bingo, right?
I love it. So what are the first ones we're going to take a look at here? These goodbyes, because there's a list of ways to say goodbye.
Oh, there is, yeah, and I'm sure there are many more, but here's a quick list that came to mind. So, the one, if we have time at the end, we can go over some of the ones that you'll see in textbooks. But
Yeah.
one that I use a lot is 다녀오겠습니다.
Yes, yes, all the time. I would say I use this at least once or twice a day,
Exactly,
depending where I am, because it's formal, very
Yes,
formal.
very
Yes.
formal, yeah. But I would only use that if you're going to come back, hopefully, right? So
Yeah.
even if not right away, but later in the day, maybe next week, whatever.
Yeah.
Probably the same day. So
I think that's kind of that first thing that we even need to cover here is the word to go in the dictionary is 가다. But the word 다니다, if we use quite a lot, is kind of going and coming back to
yeah, for
somewhere.
like a special reason, or you're going for a purpose, not just going, probably, right?
Exactly.
You could also say like 갔다 오겠습니다. But,
Yeah.
I'd say like collocation-wise, 다녀오겠습니다 would be much more common.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. So I feel like for you guys here, if you were in a formal situation, maybe like at work, 뭐 회사에서 아니면 뭐 회식할 때, 뭐 약간 그런 데에서는 우리 다녀오겠습니다라고 많이 하잖아요.
많이
Yeah, we do that a lot. But let's say you're not in that super formal situation here. There's a lot of people that will use 다녀올게요, like
sure, yes.
that sort of
다녀올게,
thing.
다녀올게요. Yeah, depending on the level of formality.
Yeah, that's again, we've talked about the three levels. 반말, 존댓말, 높임말. We have these three levels here. 다녀올게 is that 반말, 다녀올게요 is the, kind of the 존댓말 version.
Basic
but
level, right? So,
those are basically saying the same things as
for sure.
다녀오겠습니다, right?
Just different register, different level of speech, right?
Yeah, and you're sort of, when you say 다녀올게요, you're kind of implying that the other person is going to be like, okay, yeah, no, 잘 갔다 와. Like this sort of,
Exactly.
like
So-
they're going to respond. You're kind of almost expecting a response from them.
And the response is as easy as the greeting. So if you say 다녀오겠습니다, the other person, the 상대방, might say 다녀오세요. Right? If
yeah.
at the same level of formality, or just 다녀와, 다녀와요, 다녀올게. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It all comes down to these levels of formality here. So if you're doing the 다녀오겠습니다, I don't think someone would be like, oh, 다녀와. Like it's you could, but I would say most
20-year
people.
age gap, maybe,
Yeah,
right?
maybe
So-
like my principal and me back when I first was teaching here. But for the most part, you kind of stick within very similar levels. So yeah, that if I was to be like, oh, 다녀오겠습니다. Daniel-
다녀오세요. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Or if I might say something like, oh, 다녀올게요.
다녀와. Right?
Exactly. So we use this 다녀오다 kind of expression, I'd say, this
Sure, a
phrase
lot, yeah.
here.
It is a catchphrase too.
Yeah, it's used all the time, I would say. So I want everyone here, if you're going to take something away, just these kind of key expressions here are the ones that you'll use time and time again. We're not
Agreed.
teaching you anything that's limited. This
No,
is
not at
in
all. This
every
is,
day.
any situation. Almost,
Any
yeah.
situation. But what's this next one you got
Okay,
here?
so if you're going, but you're not sure if you're coming back, or you might not be coming back, you could just say 가보겠습니다. So I'm going to get going. I'm going to leave. Right? So,
Yeah.
nice, polite way.
I would say it's like you said, you hit the nail on the head here. The difference is you're not quite sure if you're coming back or not, or
Just leaving.
You're just leaving. So if you have the 가보겠습니다, the next one down might be 가볼게요.
가볼게요,
Yep.
exactly.
Or like I'm gonna go. I often will say this with my friend. 내가 먼저 가볼게. Like
exactly.
I'll kind of head out
If you're
first.
leaving first, as you point out.
Yeah. If I'm heading out first, I'll be like, I'll head out first. Bye, guys. 내가 먼저 가볼게. Like, it's kind of just a commonly used expression. Now, Hwang Hugs here says, since Koreans already have Hangul, but why is there still Hanja?
Ooh, great question. Okay, for anything, and the usage of Hanja, I would say, has waned a lot in recent years, but it's still great to express like a difficult idea in just one syllable, and also since Korean does have a lot of homonyms, as does English, it's a great way to kind of determine the meaning of a word that could have many different meanings. Or
Absolutely.
a syllable that could have many different meanings.
Absolutely. I'd say, I know it sounds frustrating when learning a language to know that you have to learn the Korean, but also this added Chinese aspect as well. It sounds like this mountain will never end. But I have to say, once you learn some of the Hanja, I feel like you've almost automatically leveled up on the mountain. You've kind of reached a point where you can be like, oh, I kind of understand a lot more.
Totally agree, yeah. And learning those Hanja will help you read pretty much any document, any formal document in Korean, like, government, corporate, whatever. You need a couple of Hanja to get you through.
So I feel you. My heart goes out to you. It looks difficult, but trust me, learning the Hanjas will help you so much in life. And it's really just pure memorization of them that you got to go through it. So it's just slow rote memorization, but trust me, you'll be able to get through it. If I can do it, anybody can do
We
it.
all can, right? So.
But we also have this next one that comes after 가보겠습니다.
Sure.
How would we use this next one, would you say?
Well, if someone says, for example, 가볼게요 or 가보겠습니다, you might say 들어가세요. So, I mean, seeing you off, like, oh, you may go now. Kind
네.
of, yeah.
우리 보통 퇴근할 때 많이 쓰는 표현이죠.
먼저 가보겠습니다.
네, 먼저 가보겠습니다. 네, 조심히 들어가세요. 집에 잘 다녀오세요. Like you kind of just you kind of use it as like a goodbye, sort of like, oh yeah, get home safe, like get be on your way safely, sort of thing. So it's really these kind of pairings you almost use them
Almost,
as.
yeah, exactly.
Like it's almost a common thing that you would just expect this as the answer here. Now, if we were gonna say, like we were at 회식, like a company dinner, or maybe like you're in a meeting, 회의 중인데 you have to suddenly get up. What would you maybe say there?
Well, hopefully you're going to come back if it's a meeting. Right?
Yeah, for sure, right?
Hopefully, right?
I'm leaving, bye.
At least say you're coming back, right? So in a meeting, I would personally say, 다녀오겠습니다.
Yeah.
Likewise, at a 회식, 갑자기 전화가 와서, 팀장님 다녀오겠습니다. That would be fine. If you have to leave 회식 after 1차, and maybe these days, I mean, typically ends pretty early anyway, but I would say, 먼저 가보겠습니다.
먼저 가보겠습니다. What about this one? 먼저 실례해야 하겠습니다. Like, what would you use this for?
I'm glad you asked about that. So I put that in just to show like if an extra layer of like formality or you want to appear contrite about leaving early, you might say that, right? So.
It's very much this like, I'm so
sorry I have to leave.
do this.
I don't want to leave, but
I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. Like because 실례 is kind of the word for, what do you want to say?
To be excused?
Yeah, like please excuse me. I'm so sorry. Like 실례하겠습니다. Like I'm really sorry, but like so when this say 먼저 is the word for like first.
First, yes.
I'd say so. 먼저 실례해야겠습니다. I'm so sorry. I will have to go
I
first.
will have to go, exactly.
Yeah.
I will need to be excused.
Yeah, and so I will say that when okay, maybe I'm selling myself out here. 제가 선생님이었을 때는 그때 우리 회식 많이 했잖아요. 회식했을 때마다 우리 교장 그리고 교감 선생님들이 뭐 그냥 막 2차, 3차, 4차까지 계속 하고 싶었어요.
Right?
Yeah. They wanted to go like to, we call them chas, like the rounds, the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, and like just at the karaoke, and then we're having drinks and things. And I didn't want to do it. I wanted to go home because I needed to work tomorrow. So I learned this phrase as a way to get out of like 3차. And I would be like, 죄송한데 먼저 실례해야겠습니다. And they'd be like, no, Kayla. And then this is what happened. What is our next word that comes up here?
I bet one of them said, 좀 더 이따 가시지요.
All the time I would get the latch on the arm.
Exactly. Don't leave us.
Yanking me out. And they'd be like, 좀 더 이따 가시죠. Like you can go in a little bit. Not now.
Not just yet, yeah.
Yeah, not yet. You go in a little bit. And I was just like,
what else are you going to say? Yeah. And it's precisely for those situations where you want to use the 실례해야겠습니다.
Exactly. It's that level of politeness that we all must adhere to.
Feeling contrite.
Exactly. But there are ways we can say goodbye in terms of like just with friends.
Oh, sure.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't always have to be so polite.
No, not at all. And I'd say you probably end up using this more. Just 먼저 간다 or 나 간다, right?
Oh, I every day, 30 times a day, I'm like, 나 간다. Like,
안녕, right?
but I often use there's a video game that's very popular, and they'll use these kind of mixed terms of like 하이옴 and like
Ooh, that's cute.
빠이옴. I'll often use these kind of terms of like bye bye 빠이옴. Like I'm just very polite, sort of Konglishized ways. But I remember when I was a teacher, we would often say to our students, 잘 가요.
잘 가요, exactly.
Yeah.
There's even a song.
Yeah,
I won't sing it. But
oh, there's a song?
There is a song.
Oh, there
Yes,
is a song. I do know the song
I don't know
now.
if we're allowed to sing it. But
We usually are. It's fine. But their 잘 가요 is kind of one of these common expressions that you usually use from a higher person down to maybe a little bit lower
Exactly,
person.
yeah,
Yeah, like a lower rank.
Or you could say 잘 가세요.
Oh yeah,
going up,
잘 가세요.
likewise.
Yeah,
Counter example.
and I would say, what are some other ways? Like we might not necessarily be saying, oh, like goodbye. We might say, oh, see you in a bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah. 다음에 또 보자 or 또 보자.
Oh,
이따
yeah.
보자. Right.
이따 보자. I use that. 좀 이따 보자. Like, I'll see you guys in a little bit. We'll see you soon. So there's so many ways to kind of cover this, but I feel like the ones that are the most textbook, the ones that everybody learns and yet still get confused
For sure.
are the basic 안녕히 가세요 and
Exactly.
안녕히 계세요.
Exactly.
Do you agree?
I do agree. And to be honest, I don't use them all that often unless it's a very formal situation.
Same. I almost never. I think maybe when I get out of a cab and I'll be like, 네 안녕히 가세요.
Even then,
Like,
I would say like 조심히 가세요.
Yeah, 조심히 가세요.
Given his line of work, his or her line
exactly.
of work, right?
Like
So, yeah.
you just like or like I usually will just end with like have a good day. Usually like 즐거운 하루 되세요.
Exactly.
Like
that's another way to say goodbye.
I
too.
don't often use these textbook ones. So what? How if we were going to explain them? How would we explain them?
Okay, well, if you're staying and someone else is going, you can wish someone a good departure, I guess. And
Yeah.
By saying that, you could say 안녕히 가세요.
Yeah.
So 안녕히 가세요. It's usually shortened some. But I would encourage people not to pronounce each syllable separately because
Yeah.
it'll sound awkward.
Yeah,
So-
it's kind of like when you say 안녕하세요 as well. Like you're not 안녕하세요.
No,
Like
right.
it just it sounds so awkward and
some linkage, some nasalization.
yeah,
to
you
bring
can
it
just
closer,
kind of
right?
mumble your way through it, and it'll sound more natural than if
Agreed,
you kind of to박 that.
Yeah.
But then, what's the opposite? If you're the one leaving and they're
Okay.
staying,
Well, I mean, I guess wishing them a good day, as it were, wishing them peace and happiness as they stay where they are. 안녕히 계세요.
Yeah.
So that comes from 계시다, right? So stay in
staying
peace.
somewhere,
I
yeah.
guess, yeah.
And so that's basically what you'll probably see the most in your textbooks. But as Daniel said, we don't really use them that often.
I don't. Not maybe once a day at most.
Yeah, I really can't think. Most of the times it's very similar to English, I'd say, for our English native speakers here, where how often do you actually say the full terminology of goodbye? Like I will often be like, oh, see you later. Yeah, have a good one. Oh, have a good day. Like just kind of those
See
are
ya, right,
Yeah,
so,
see ya. And even for things like 다녀오겠습니다. Oh, I'll be back soon. You know, just we don't really have that full formality
Agreed.
of goodbye. Like I feel like I'm an AI
Sounds
voice,
fancy, right?
like
So,
an
yeah.
AI voice. Goodbye. Like it's so
It's your
creepy.
virtual assistant, right? So,
Yeah, that's literally the only time I hear it is when I talk to my AI assistant. And so I think if there's anything you guys can take away here, it would be those key expressions of 다녀올게요, 다녀오겠습니다.
가보겠습니다.
And the one other thing I really wanted to talk about was somebody asked me recently is what's the difference between 다녀올 거예요 and 올게요? And I was like, well, I would say 다녀올게요 because that is the common expression. But I think what they're talking about is the grammar points
Yeah,
here.
like the future tense marker. I would
Yes,
say. That would
that's
be
what
the
I'm
only
going to
difference,
say
yeah.
is what was being addressed here because I would never say, it just sounds weird to say 다녀올 거예요 to me.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever said that. Maybe
No.
seen it in a grammar book.
But
yeah.
I think that's the point is this grammar that you learn in these books here are not always applied to every situation.
Agreed.
And that's why Daniel's here. So if we were going to take that 올 거예요 versus 올게요, how would you break those two apart?
I would use just the 다녀올게요 because that seems to be the most common collocation.
Yeah.
Unless maybe if you were quoting someone in direct speech,
Yeah.
you might say 다녀올 거예요라고 했다. Maybe, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, but
It's awkward.
It sounds awkward to my
Yeah,
ear, at least.
I think if you were gonna see the 올 거예요 in like a grammatical sense, like 어디로 갈 거예요, like you're going somewhere. I'm going to do this, and it
In the
kind of,
future, kind of,
yeah, it has that feeling of 100%. This is gonna happen in the future.
In
This
the
is the
future.
plan.
Exactly.
Whereas the 갈게요 or 다녀올게요, as we said before, it kind of feels
In the
like
present.
a presently,
Agreed.
and you're almost waiting for the opposite person to acknowledge that.
Call and response type pattern. Yeah.
So
agreed.
I'd say that would be for, I forget who sent me that comment, but thank you for that.
That's a
because
really good question,
it is, it can be very confusing. Now, Jamin and Asai says, 안녕히 가세요 sounds so intimidating. It's so formal.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Hear it in a department store, maybe, right? So, yeah, right.
That's true.
Followed by 손님 or
Yeah, it would be like,
고객님, right?
it's usually like, 어서 오세요. Like, 네.
무엇을 도와드릴까요?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then when you leave, they're just like, 안녕히 가십시오. Like, it's just this very formal thing. In Vruminim says, in PH, we don't even say bye. We just leave.
I like that. PH, I'm guessing, is the Philippines, right? So,
I'm going to assume Philippines
I like
here.
that. Yeah, nice
Yeah,
and
I feel like that just makes that easier. Just kind of like,
simple hand motion, right? So laters, right?
absolutely. Now, I feel like we've covered most of these here, but there always is time for one movie clip that we
Awesome.
got to make sure we get a movie, because I can't wait to hear Daniel's movie
Hope
voice
I can pull
every
it off,
way.
right? Yeah.
Now, let's listen to this first clip we have here.
사랑이라는 게 처음부터 풍덩 빠지는 건 줄만 알았지. 이렇게 서서히 물들어 버릴 수 있는 건 줄은 몰랐어.
Ooh, that's a nice one. So sweet.
Sweet.
Sounds like a romantic comedy.
Definitely
right?
sounds like a romance. I've never seen this. However, it's from 미술관 옆 동물원. So I have yet to see this. But it's very sweet here. Now,
Agreed.
I know it's a female voice. Are you
Ooh.
wishing to try this? Or
Sure.
I would love to hear you attempt
Should
this.
I attempt it in a female voice or
I
just
would-
read it in my normal voice?
Any voice. Do it in your most romantic voice.
Gotcha. Okay. I will. Here goes. So, 사랑이라는 게 처음부터 풍덩 빠지는 건 줄만 알았지. 이렇게 서서히 물들어 버릴 수 있는 건 줄 몰랐어.
It's so sweet.
느끼해. Right?
Basically, I think I've never seen it, but it sounds like originally this person thought that from like the beginning you're supposed to kind of fall in love in like this big old
Splash into love.
Yeah, like a
Sudden crash, right?
But
So, yeah.
she is like actually this kind of gradual falling like into
Exactly.
love. This
Permeated by love. Right?
yes,
So,
she's like I didn't know it could happen like this, and so
the
that's
nature of love, right?
yeah, and I feel like if we can take, we're always so running out of time. I feel like if there's one thing I want to talk about here is just the description of her terms for love here. That 풍덩, that sound for like a splash,
yeah.
into love.
And I'm sure many of our listeners have heard like 퐁당, which
Yes.
is like in water. But this, as far as I'm aware of, is the sound of like a solid surface hitting. So like 퐁동 would be a rock, maybe. Or
So like a smash or
a
like
smash,
a
slightly
something-
harder sounding than 퐁당.
like just a boom sort of feeling. But I what I think is so cool. Oh, Gab here says Professor Daniel is a professional actor. Please get him an acting job ASAP.
I'm always looking, always up for
100%
that.
agree
right? So-
here. But I feel like one of the best takeaways from this for this pungdong here is those onomatopoeias,
I
those
love those,
lisongos.
yes.
Those are so much fun. Before we go, do you have any favorite onomatopoeias you want to share?
Well, absolutely. I do more than my fair share of traveling. Korea has a wonderful train system, so I love the sound of a train in Korean.
And how do you do train?
I'll do it in my favorite train voice.
Oh,
here.
yes.
So, 칙칙폭폭.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it. And for me, my favorite is probably the word for kids when they're walking and they kind of are swaying back and forth. You know the awkward walk that kids do? Mine is called ajang ajang. Ajang ajang is that feeling of, I picture like a little kid like ajang 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 ajang, like this kind of feeling of just like
classic.
walking,
tottering around, kind of.
Yeah, it's so cute.
Tottering.
And that's the cool thing about these onomatopoeias and mimetic words that they have. 의태어 is mimetic word, onomatopoeia is 의성어, and they're really so great at making an expression more descriptive.
Exactly. And if you see like two of the same syllables followed by the same two syllables, that's usually an onomatopoeia. So
Exactly.
easy to spot as well. Yeah.
Easy, a lot of animal noises also.
Agreed.
All those in there. But I feel like we always run out of time here because Daniel has so many cool things. But don't worry, next week he will be back with some more expressions and
Absolutely.
fun terms.